Bayou Time Sports is brought to you by Terrible General Health System's Community Sports Institute in conjunction with Barker Honda.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time Sports. I'm your host, Keith Weissite. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it very, very much. And I will tell you, this is an exciting time of year. A lot of people are thinking just because it's hot, there may be not a lot to do. Well, I can tell you, when it comes to keeping your training up, there's a whole lot to do. Very glad to welcome back to the program Patrick Labat, Pat Labat, who is the Health and Sports Performance Specialist at Terrebonne General Sports Performance Training Center. Welcome to the program, Pat.
Thank you, Keith. Nice to meet you.
I appreciate it. We one of those things that, man, you guys spend so much time with so many of your student athletes that y'all have obviously got a lot of programs coming up. What's the one thing you want to say to these student athletes as they approach the summertime heat and just the summer in general?
The biggest thing I would say is just to make sure that they're prepared.
Okay.
That comes in a lot of different levels, a lot of different forms. First of which would be nutrition, hydration, that kind of thing. It's extremely hot. We're in South Louisiana, so I don't think you can say enough about the heat.
Right.
I mean, we're outside probably about 6-7 hours a day right now with different groups.
Wow.
And I make it a point not only to my athletes but to my coaches, because my coaches are out there coaching their butt off every day, and they got to be hydrated.
Right.
Otherwise they'll fall out too. So, and one of the simple ways that we teach that is, I think the simplest way for people to remember stay hydrated is the simple urine analysis. If you're using the restroom and your urine is dark yellow, then we need more water. If you got that clear water-looking urine, then you're on the right path.
Okay, and it's easy to do that. One of those other things is trying to get acclimated to the heat as well, right? You don't want to start with 5 or 6 hours if your body's not ready to take on the heat.
That's exactly right. So one of the rules that we have with my coaching staff is that when we're writing the programs and we're trying to slowly progress them towards being in shape, essentially, is that we never increase the volume of the overall program more than 30% from week to week. We try to stay somewhere around 15 to 20% of the overall volume. And if, for people out there that are thinking, what does he mean by that? If we're starting at 120 yards of sprints for one day, then the next day, the next week, if we're going to try to extend that out, then we're going to take a 15% approach, which might be something simple as now we're going to stretch out to 130 or 140 total volume of yards rather than jumping straight to 200 or 300, total yards of sprints. So it's just it can be simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's just understanding that you can't make too big of jumps too fast, and also understanding that one of the best things is something that my dad always told me as a kid is having a good coaching eye. And having a good coaching eye. So, watching the overall body language of your athletes and having them kind of just getting a feel for where they're at. If you're starting to see them lean over and they're bent over and they're having trouble getting back to the line for the next sprint, things like that. In the old school way of things, it was suck it up and let's go.
Right.
And I think that there's still some of that belongs, but for the most part, we need to be understanding that it is pretty much 100 degrees outside. And
All the time.
we have some time to get these kids in shape. So let's do it the smart way, the right way, where we're not injuring people.
Great idea of how to implement that. Let's talk about some of the goals that you actually develop and present with some of these student athletes this summer.
I feel I've always felt, and my mentor is a guy named Bouchak Snyder, who's helped me my whole life, my whole coaching life. And he's been such a great influence. And one of the first things that he approached me with, because I was so concerned with conditioning and things like that. And conditioning is a big deal. But in the off season, which is what we're in right now, is in preparation, especially in this early off season where we still got, another month or so to go. Our focus is mainly on trying to develop speed, power, and strength.
Okay.
And because those attributes are the hardest and longest term things to try to develop. Developing speed takes years and years and years. Some people are born with it, but even the people that are born with it, to make them faster, everybody, it takes long periods of time. So dedicating time to that specific thing is a big deal. And along the way, we're starting to slowly work up the conditioning, but we usually leave that closer to the beginning of the season. Along with that, though, is trying to develop with that strength, is injury prevention. And that's one of the biggest things that you can do in the off season, is try to teach them proper movement patterns. A lot of injuries come from non-contact, and those things can be prevented by properly educating on how to plant, how to change direction, and also trying to implement those high levels of tension that they're going to achieve in the sport into practice in a safe manner. So it can be tricky, but there are ways to do it.
Okay. Now listen, they say champions are made in the off season.
Yes, sir.
And so is that true for you?
I believe that.
Right.
I firmly believe that. I believe that, and it's funny because as a strength coach, everybody can get better. And that is our goal, to make everybody better. Some people are born fast. Some people are born jump high. But the common saying that's always said is the harder worker will outwork the talented guy. Will beat the talented guy in time. I believe that. And I believe that your preparation in the off season is what's going to help you flourish in the in season. So off season is the time to develop the athlete. In seasons where you develop the skills of the sport, but in off seasons where we're trying to develop the athlete, grow them, make them bigger, make them faster, make them stronger, all those, those typical things that you hear. So I believe that it starts in the off season, but it translates into the season as well.
Okay. You mentioned something very important, talking about athletes. There's so many different types now. Let's talk about some of those auxiliary programs and maybe which they should focus on for fitness for this summer.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I adopted as far as auxiliary programs, things outside of your typical weightlifting and things like that, is as we're implementing high levels of weightlifting in off season, what you'll tend to see is your athletes starting to get tight, and tight athletes is not what we want, right? We want loose, smooth athletes. Smooth is fast. That's something that we preach at our facility all the time. So using certain things like medicine ball drills, certain types of circuits, body weight circuits for our conditioning, things like that don't overuse what they're always using. So when they get the football, typical coaches are going to make them run. We're going to start with 10-40s and we're going to go 12-40s and 15-40s. That's a lot of running. And then what is required of the sport? Running.
Right.
And this is just me talking about football, but a lot of sports, soccer, things like that involve running. So what we try to do in the off season is get the conditioning in without the running. So we use circuit training and things like that to try to improve conditioning without getting the overuse of constantly running.
I will tell you, I wasn't in football, didn't play a lot of things. I played tennis in the spring, a little different weather pattern. But for those people that maybe are in band or cheerleading or a mascot, they can still be impacted and affected by the heat. What do they need to know during this off season?
Exactly what you just said, that the heat's going to affect them just the same. A lot of these sports, and when we design programs, we work with cheerleaders. We've worked with band members before. We've done a lot of those different types of things that are not your typical sports that you would consider.
Right.
But the key is to figure out what they're going to be doing and work on that, and prepare them and progress it towards that. So, a lot of people think cheerleading, it's not really a sport, things like that. I disagree. I fully disagree. Some of the stuff that they do, the stunts and the flips and the things that they do are really high level intensity, high intensity type things where the tissues and the joints, the tendons, the ligaments, they have to be prepared. So the same progression that we would take with any type of, football player, baseball player, by learning what the sport is and trying to build a program that builds from a small to a large, essentially, in forms of intensity and volume. And that's the key.
And
so
that same 30% rule in when you progress,
exactly
right?
Exactly right.
Okay, very good. What's the biggest misconception you have with student athletes related to workouts?
I feel like a lot of athletes feel that they need to be in the weight room for longer than they do. If I had to guess,
Okay.
That's one of the ones that we deal with the most. An athlete will sign up with us to train 5 days a week. We're training with our high school athletes right now, currently an hour and a half a day. That's enough. There are things that you can do outside of that hour and a half, but it shouldn't be going to another facility or going to your house and going to lift more weights.
Or doing the same thing.
Yes,
right?
and that's one of the biggest things that we see is overtraining. And I was guilty of it whenever I was, an athlete, and it wasn't until I got to college and learned a lot more that I realized, man, I wish I could go back and tell myself, hey, it's a bit too much right there.
It may not hurt
exactly.
as much, right?
So
And
quality
it can
over
happen.
quantity would be the biggest thing that I would say.
Based on that same theory, what's the difference between training boys versus training girls, or is there a difference?
So I like training both. They both have their ups and downs.
Okay.
I will say that for the most part, my girls, they come in, naive's not the word I'm looking for, but they're open to coaching. Let me say it that way. So when
It's a great naivete, right?
Right, that's right, and that's it, because they're not naive, but they understand that they don't know a lot about this, so it's
Right.
easy to coach them. Some of our guy athletes will come in with the preconceived notion that they know more than what they do, and that's okay. And
They come in all bowed up, right?
Exactly.
They're bowed up in their thought process.
And we
not
don't.
necessarily
And our
anything
job
else.
is not to destroy their confidence and tell them that they don't know anything.
Right.
But through showing them.
Right.
We let them do it their way once or twice, and then we say, hey, try this. And then they'll notice that the way that we're teaching them, wow, I'm actually jumping further. I'm doing this. So in time, you start to build that rapport with the athlete. So it's about the approach to each one. The girls, you can straight out come out and tell them, this is what I want you to do. Sometimes with guys, there requires a level of finesse to where you don't destroy their confidence in themselves, but at the same time, show them rather than tell them.
So instead of telling them you don't know as much as you know, show them that they can learn more.
That's exactly right.
I like
That's
it in a
exactly
different
right.
way. Tell me your stance on what it's like for some of these year-round sports, because we're seeing a lot more of that.
So You know, in the last segment, I'd mentioned that my mentor was a guy named Bushek Snyder.
Right.
I can't stress enough how much this guy has helped me in my life. And one of the first things when we started talking about in-season training was the hit it and quit it principle. And what I mean by that is you have to maintain strength in season. So baseball is the biggest one, right? Baseball plays year round. So we don't want them to lose their strength because then they're going to lose their bat speed. They're going to lose their ability to create power, things like that. So hitting, you know, lifting heavy weights, doing those type of things in season is important, but understanding how to. So we're not going to have an hour and a half long training session. What we might do is keep it short, keep it really high intensity. So instead of thinking 5 sets of 5 on squat, maybe we're going to do 6 sets of 2 with only 2 or 3 sets that are really, really heavy, really, really intense so that we can maintain that strength but not overdo the athlete. So the hit it and quit it principle in the fact of get in and get out. Don't make the sessions long. Hit what we need to get and get away from it. You know, and then picking those spots within that time frame. You know, do they get a 2 or 3 day layover before the next game? All right, well, then we need to take advantage of that, right? Oh, but they got 3 games coming up. Well, this is not our time to try to attack those types of techniques and lifts, right? So it's about understanding the schedule. It's about implementing where you can, and also, once again, the coaching eye. You know, what does your athletes look like they can handle today? Can they handle this today? You know.
And some of them are probably different than others.
Yes.
Your pitchers may need something differently than your
Absolutely.
left fielder.
So being able to be flexible, is a large part of being a strength coach.
Looks like you guys, numbers are growing all the time. We talked about how busy you are. Do you find that the motivation of the kids is better than it has been in the past?
Yes and no. I think
Okay.
I think it really depends on the individual.
Okay.
We still have some kids who come in and we have to I don't want to say pull them through workouts, but we have to lead them. And there are some kids where we actually have to tell them to slow it down, you know, take a break here. You know, you need to take a minute here. You're going too fast, that kind of thing. So I think it really depends on the individual. I'm not a big believer that the work ethic of the next generation is falling off. I think it just all depends on person to person.
I like it. And you're talking about having an individualized approach.
Absolutely.
And it's very important, like male versus female, like some of the athletes in different sports. I like it. So let's talk about this for a second. It's got to be satisfying to see some success, whether it's in these schools or recreationally. Do y'all track some of those students to see how they do?
We try.
Okay.
It's difficult. And what I mean by that is, and I've had this talk with many of my coaches that have worked with me in the past, is one of the most rewarding parts of our job is when a parent sends us a video of my kid went 3 for 3 with 2 home runs, and they send you the videos, you know, or they, you know, they had 15 tackles in this game, or they scored 2 touchdowns, or whatever the sport might be.
Right.
We love that. You know, that's one of the biggest things, and we wish that we could be there more, but in reality, we have a full-time job, and so it's difficult to get away from the gym to go to all the different events. We try very hard to make it to events when we can.
Okay.
But it's a bittersweet feeling because you know you impacted that kid, and you know that what you did made a difference.
Right.
And that they're going to go there and they're going to do that, and you'll never be seen for it.
Right.
But
right.
yeah.
But tell us a little bit about some of these stellar collegiate athletes or pro athletes that you've had the opportunity to work with.
Yeah. So we're in Homer, Louisiana. So
Yeah,
I will be
small town Homer,
correct,
right?
Correct. So our professional level athletes, they come far and few between. In the past, we have had the opportunity to work with Elijah McGuire, who was a graduate of Vanderbilt Catholic, played with the New York Jets, and most recently with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
More recently than that, through my mentor that I spoke about earlier, Bushek Snyder, I was able to sit in on a training session where he trained some Major League Baseball players, one of which was Austin Nola, who plays catcher in the Major Leagues.
Major Leagues, yeah.
So when me and him started talking, he come to find out he married a girl from Morgan City. He comes down to this area a lot in the off season. So this last off season, he popped into the gym and got a couple of training sessions, and he reached out. And so it wasn't very long, but it was a few sessions while he was in town visiting family and whatnot. More than that, what we get a lot of is college. A lot of soccer players are one of the biggest ones that we get from college.
Okay.
There's a young lady named Molly Thompson that we've worked with in the past. She was at LSU for 4 years, and she
Yep.
just transferred to Ole Miss. She
Right.
was here in the off season. She actually just went back to Oxford a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
But it's and in the past we've had the Hannah Cunios and the Julianne the Blues. I think that's
right?
Yeah, I
The
think I'm
Blue.
saying that name right.
Yep.
And the Grace Champagnes, things that went to UL Lafayette and LSU and things like that. So we actually have some baseball players in the gym right now. Thomas Amador, who plays for UNO.
Right.
He's a pitcher. He was redshirted this year, but he had to get an elbow procedure, I believe. But he's looking great. I mean, truly,
that's
he's been training with us in the off season. He's looking great. We got another guy, Shea Petrie, who's in there right now, and we got some high school kids that have just signed some scholarships as well.
That's awesome. Now, I know you work with a lot of the kids, a lot of the athletes. Let's talk a little bit about what maybe you have as an advantage for some of the fitness programs for those who are a little bit older, maybe like me.
Correct. So we run some adult programs, especially whenever the kids are in school, and the college athletes are off at college, and the pro athletes are off playing ball.
Right.
We have some openings in the gym. So
Okay.
what we do is we provide two different types of classes. We have a fit class and a fit camp. Both programs are designed around the ACSM guidelines, which are 3 times a week resistance training and 150 minutes of cardio a week, just for healthy adults. So what we try to do with our programs is offered 3 times a week. What we try to do with our programs is we try to mix your regular adult recommended fitness levels with our sports performance training. So it's very sports based, but we stay away from all the major stuff that could get an older individual hurt. So we think it's very cool what we do, very unique. It's not CrossFit, it's not you Planet Fitness, it's nothing like that. It's a lot of free weights and things like that, but truly it's unique in the fact of it's a program designed that's based around older adults, but almost written as if you were an athlete.
Wow. And so that's kind of what makes those classes different from you just run-of-the-mill boot camp or Pilates.
Yeah, and that fit class is the other camp that we offer. It's in the late afternoon, 6:30 to 7:30, and that is a jumpstart fitness class. So it's kind of, if you haven't been doing anything for a while and you're looking to start to get active, it's a 6-week program that we offer, and it's been very, very popular and very successful for us.
Okay. And I know how busy you guys are right now. Let's talk about the time period and the activities that might happen with the adults in the fit class.
Yes, sir. We have another fit class coming up in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I can't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but there's one coming up. If that's something that interests anybody out there, we encourage you to give us a call. We can talk you through it, set up a consultation. We do those all the time. And other than that, it's our normal fit classes that we run pretty regularly. Those go year round.
Okay.
And then, right now our biggest thing that we're doing is our athlete summer camps.
Okay. Now, obviously, everybody doesn't start at the same level. They don't stay at the same level. How do you kind of individualize these programs for people at different ages and people at different levels?
I think it's important for myself and our coaches to understand the proper level of progression. So the easiest way that I can, set this example is that we, in the same session that we have, we might have a 20-year-old girl who is a 25-year-old girl who is in pretty good shape. She's still pretty active from her high school or college days of playing, and now she's not playing anymore, and now she's going to join one of our fit classes. And in that same fit class, we might have a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old, and a 35-year-old with a hip replacement. And so the ability to say, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, and it all falls within the same line. They're moving together, but it's all safe for everybody. And the easiest way to describe that is, my hip replacement person might start off with body weight squats with using some TRX straps or rings as assistance. So it's body weight. We're just working through a range of motion, trying to build a base level of general strength. Meanwhile, my girl who just finished playing college soccer, who's now just in a fitness class, she might actually be doing barbell squats, So it's just having an understanding of a proper exercise progression and figuring out where that person lands within it.
And so how do people meet with you to get a consult or just maybe to see if this program's right for them? How do they do that?
You can go on Terrebonne General's website, and under the Healthy Lifestyle Center, you can find a tab that says Sports Performance Training Center. You click on that, and it's going to have all our information. Or you can just reach out to give us a call. That number can be found online as well. And our secretary, Tessie, does an outstanding job of setting up those consultations and working that. And so we figure out what works best for your schedule. We open up ours, and we find a way to get that in.
Yeah, and like you mentioned earlier, you guys are kind of running really heavy, 7 to 7 right now.
Yeah,
y'all are in the gym. It's 12 plus hours
Yep.
a day in the Sports Performance Training Institute, which is just really cool. And like you mentioned, Tessie does a great job. She's never met a stranger, which is awesome.
That's exactly
so as soon
right.
as you call Tess, you
That's
know
exactly right.
that she's going to take care of you. And Stan Gravois does a fantastic job of overseeing everything with the program.
Stan is just he's very easy to work with. He's very well-rounded in the fact that he has the coaching experience. He has some really great a guy that works underneath him who's a manager named Brett Chasson, who's my boss.
Right.
So he's my one-up and Stan's my two-up. And I just can't say enough about the good things. They have an understanding of everything that goes on, and they're very easy to work with. And they don't micromanage. It's an outstanding organization.
Terrebonne General Health System is lucky to have all of you. We're thankful for you coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that will do it for us for Bayou Time Sports. Don't go anywhere. A lot more local programming here on HTV.